I am a part of the teaching community and a testament to his excellence to education. His legacy as an educator will be remembered through the lives he touched, the knowledge he imparted, and the inspiration he provided to countless students and adults. He will dearly be missed, and his contributions to education will continue to resonate in the hearts and minds of those he taught and our country. Finally, I wish to say congratulations to the St. Kitts National Youth Parliament Association for successfully hosting the 3rd Annual Youth Forum under the theme Youth in Action, Nurturing Green Skills for Tomorrow's Leaders. The association embarked on a journey of empowerment and transformation. And of course, we are hoping that the general public, our fan supporters, well-wishers, and cooperative sponsors continue to collaborate, support, and stay with us as an association as we continue to propel not just the voices of our youth and young people, but of course propel the advancement of nation building through our actions. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion, but in doing so, allow me to
3 p.m. Yes, that's
send
right.
condolences
2 days of brand launches, gifts, giveaways, massive savings, and more. It's our annual trunk show. Visit us.
The question is that this Honorable House stands adjourned, sign a die. All in favor?
This is an event you don't want
All
to
against?
miss. See you there.
The ayes have it.
Christmas tree brings to us both joy and glee. Oh Christmas tree, oh Christmas tree, much pleasure that thou bring. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer are the very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say to go down in history.
This new initiative to bring information to our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and good morning to all of our citizens. So we can get into it.
Absolutely. So I want to begin with national security in your capacity as Minister with responsibility for that, and I want to speak to the government and the police response to gun violence, criminal activity in communities across St. Kitts and Nevis. Can you speak to that?
Right. Thank you very much. Well, to put things in perspective, coming out of COVID, the regional assessment was that there was more movement of guns and drugs and so forth through the Caribbean region, and that would affect us in a particular way. Hence, we had the violence from a public health perspective, or dealing with violence, but from a public health perspective. That symposium was held in Trinidad and Tobago earlier this year, which was, of course, the guest no speaker was Dr. Isben Williams, a Kittitian, who had put forward a number of critical matters before the leaders of the Caribbean, that being how to effectively deal with the matter. Here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we would have had our own local issues that would have affected us. And so, in a sense, we putting measures in place to deal with it, not only in the short term, but for once and for all, to deal with the issue of violence here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And a number of critical things that we are putting in place, apart from the immediate response. One of it, of course, is to put the task force in place that we will seek to implement the issue of dealing with violence from a public health perspective. And that, of course, the principal advisor is Dr. Isben Williams, who is recognized as a leading Caribbean expert. It's just that for many years, we had not implemented such a comprehensive plan or program to deal with violence. We had attempted to do things here and things there, which I would not get into today, some of which would have aggravated the situation. However, we do recognize that the violence issue has to be dealt with at its root, along with dealing with issues that are being presented now. And so I want the people of St. Kitts and Nevis to know that this is what I have been speaking about for some time, because this, what is happening to the Caribbean and in St. Kitts and Nevis, is definitely not something that is not unexpected based on where we are heading. However, there is a solution to it which we are seeking to implement as soon as possible. It is a comprehensive solution. But before I get into the rest, let me take the opportunity to express my sincerest condolences to the families and friends, the communities that have long-lasting implementation of anything. So I want to say to those families and the communities that we feel. Yesterday, I visited St. Peter's. There was some discussion about, my birthday and so forth, and let me address it head on. And here in the news, I suspended my birthday celebration, and I called the families and scheduled to meet with them, which I went and met with them and spent time with them, because these are people who I know and I understand what they are going through. And even apart from that, any community that is going through this, of course, would need that type as well. And so I did that. And so after I would have done that, then I proceeded to put a statement out, because I think still it was the prudent thing to do, the correct thing to do, to meet with the families, have meaningful intervention, discussion, extend the support, and then report to the nation as to what was done, instead of rushing to social media, which would be the type of response, a knee-jerk response. But I think getting to the families and the communities was the first and most important thing to do, which I proceeded to do.
How will your administration address the issue of gun trafficking? Because in St. Kitts and Nevis, we do not produce guns, we don't make guns, we don't manufacture guns, but guns are on the streets across the communities in St. Kitts and Nevis. How will your administration address that?
Right. So we are dealing with it from an international perspective. And that is why I kept saying that we have engaged the Americans, who have now put forward plans from their own perspective to deal with the transshipment of guns from the United States of America to other places to come to the Caribbean. Because most of the guns identified are manufactured in the United States of America.
Right.
That access to gun is, of course, a significant aspect when it comes to looking at gun violence. You have to stop the flow of guns. And so that is what was asked of the Americans, and they have vowed to work on that as well. Secondly, we know that the borders being porous can result in a number of critical matters as well. And those critical matters that can result in is one of the critical matters. One of the critical matters that can be dealt with is how do you stop or block the porous borders? You have borders that are porous, of course, meaning that you need more robust surveillance. We want to thank the United States government for donating to us a vessel that can really circulate St. Kitts and Nevis to help with protecting the borders. But not only that, we are now moving to have in the first quarter of next year a radar system that can track any vessel that is coming into St. Kitts and Nevis, which again the Americans are helping us with. So we are dealing with it. And then we have reconstituted the canine unit, meaning that the canine unit now, we had got the dogs recently because it was disbanded, and we have now reintroduced the canine unit. And so we now have the pups which are growing up and they are being trained and will be ready in the next few months. That will help with the surveillance at the borders, in the prison and other places, in the communities, to deal with identifying guns and so forth. And the RSS has also stepped in, which they are putting a program together of how we're going to deal with getting the guns off the street. But apart from that, the police had removed or have removed a number of weapons from the streets and have removed bullets as well from the streets. So that has to be from the international partners, the local partners, in terms of dealing with customs and making sure we take up our strategies and how we're going to do it down to the community level. So the guns are an issue, but we alone can't deal with it. And that is why a vetting center was set up recently. We are collaborating with, the INL and so forth, the FBI and so forth, of how we can help to deal with investigation and also how we can stop the flow of guns. So we know a lot of guns have flowed into the region, and that is how we intend. So we're going to deal with it from multi perspectives so that we can deal with it. Now, I'm not oblivious to the fact that presently there had been a surge. We had a lull where it went down from early in the year, and then we see a recent surge again. Sometimes these things happen in surges. And so what we have putting in place now are measures that are sustained measures. We have our new national security advisor, Dr. Rollins, who is here with us. We also have Dr. Powell, who is an advisor as well, who have tremendous experience in dealing with these things and now are implementing the different programs to holistically deal with this matter and to also deal with this matter from a perspective of evidence-based and so forth. And so those are being implemented to make sure. There are other things that I cannot speak of, but are being done now. However, there is a plan, and the plan has been executed of how to deal with the suppression of what is taking place. So I want the people of St. Kitts and Nevis to know that once and for all, we are going to implement a plan in dealing with violence from a broad perspective, a public health perspective, where all will be brought to the table, and that plan will be implemented, not just for now, but that is a plan that has to be implemented so that all of us have our hands on the deck. And the reason why it's important, not just to say people are coming together, but once you come together, what is the plan of action? Once you come together, how are you going to go forward? And no country in the Caribbean had adopted the recommendations from the study that was done by the World Bank in dealing with violence from a public health perspective. So all that is happening here and through the Caribbean, these things were predicted to happen. They were predicted to happen. And I'm saying unless we deal with it comprehensively and what is recommended, we'll be just dealing with it superficially, and it will just be a matter of time until it gets worse and worse and worse as it's happening through the region. All of this has been predicted. Even before I got here, I had already said since early that this is the path that the Caribbean is on. This is the path we are headed, and therefore we now have to make sure. So St. Kitts and Nevis will be the first country to implement such a task force. Fortunately, we have Dr. Isben Williams, who would be the senior advisor, or the principal advisor to that committee. He has already started to put everything together. We have met since then, and we intend to meet again. So plans are in place to do that. And we'll have a public showing in the not too far a distant future, so that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis can be aware as to exactly where we are with that. But I am very hopeful because we have the remedy to the solution, and we are going to invest in it, and we are going to implement it, and we are blessed to have one of the leading experts who will be the principal advisor when it comes to this. So we are fervently working on this. But nonetheless, in terms of the suppression, the national security advisor there, and also the Dr. Powell, the commissioner, the commander, customs, all of them have sat and have put a plan in place. And so we expect to see that that plan will have results. So we are looking at the immediate, the intermediate, and the long term to once and for all rid our country of this serious scourge of violence. Will it take some time? It will not take as much time as we might think, because of who we have at the table and who have the experience and the know-how. But all hands will be on deck. This is a societal problem, and it will take all of us to deal with it. However, the government will lead on it because we are serious about implementing that plan once and for all, and to use this model that can be adopted by other Caribbean countries.
People have asked questions, Mr. Prime Minister, or have raised questions about the status of the Elevate program, which was, I think before it was referred to as the Peace program. As National Security Minister, what is the status of that program?
So, as you know, there was what people call the Alternative Lifestyle Program, which was known as the Peace program. And we understand what that was about. Very hard-laden rehabilitation took place. We know that money was passed in significant amounts. We're talking about millions of dollars, not pocket change. And there wasn't any robust rehabilitation. And that is the issue. If you had invested so much and rehabilitation had taken place, the rehabilitation would have had its effect, and you would have seen the results. But we know that while that was happening, there was not a lot of rehabilitation. It was not even the foundation of the program. The Elevate program had to come in and seek to revamp a lot of that, because let me tell you what was happening, and I will talk frankly. We were going down the road of creating a DON system where you would have a DON control a particular area. We saw what happened in Jamaica. We saw what happened in Trinidad. We saw what happened in El Salvador. That system actually is so dangerous that I often say it will take Jamaica a next generation to extricate that type of system out of their social fabric, because it has become part and parcel to some extent of their social fabric. And if you listen to what the Prime Minister of Jamaica has been saying, and he's very strong on it, he really wants to get rid of the problem, but also recognizing how deep the problem is. We were heading down that road in St. Kitts and Nevis, that DON system that you cannot get rid of. However, I from the assessment that we made, there's hope that we have not reached that point. And so therefore it gives us an opportunity to turn back from the path we were heading down. And I sought to not discuss all of it because of some sensitivities, but I think it's time also that the people of the country know what was taking place.
So with this program,
With this program, with Elevate, we are continue to put it together. It would have a strong element of rehabilitation, accountability, and transparency. It would really seek to transform the lives of people. What we want is to give people the opportunity to be rehabilitated and to be reintegrated into society. And secondly, to prevent people from going into gangs. I want to say to our young people, gangs result in obviously death, results in destruction of life. You end up in jail, bring shame to your family, to your community. There is nothing positive to come out of a gang. However, our young people have to take advantage also of the many opportunities that are available in St. Kitts and Nevis. So that's one way of doing it. The other way, besides the Elevate, which we are doing, so Elevate will be a program which will deal a lot with, in my estimation, what we are doing with rehabilitation, setting up programs to intervene as well, so that our young people can have meaningful alternatives when it comes to developing their lives, and that gang life is not a viable option for them. Look at what we have done for young people. A lot of things. We have made college free. The young people can go free. Yesterday I gave out laptops in K-On. All young people in our schools will have laptops. We have also made it possible for young people to extend their talents in the creative arts industry, to extend their talents in sports. We brought back sports in school and so forth, because it's a holistic approach. In St. Kitts and Nevis, if a young person is determined, they have opportunities. We have given economic cost to all those who go to University of the West Indies. We have also given to our people reduced interest rates on student loans. We have also, of course, given more scholarships to our young people. And apart from that, we are bringing on the TVET so that our young people can be trained in areas of the technical courses and so forth. And so we have done a number of things to give our young people good alternatives and to really turn away from a life of crime. And so, in a sense, Elevate is just part and parcel of what we are seeking. Right now, we have expanded the Cadet Corps, so that the Cadet Corps now is going to be larger this year than before, and the cadets, the military, has gone into the school to do recruitment, again, giving our young people an alternative path. And so, we are creating a number of pathways that our young people can take, so that this crime that we're dealing with since maybe in the 80s, coming up in this way, that we have to deal with it fundamentally and at its roots once and for all. We cannot continue on this pathway. And that is what I will bring for St. Kitts and Nevis, and also that is what I will bring for the Caribbean. And in short order, we are going to launch that program. In short order, health from a public health perspective, violence from a public health perspective, we are very close to it. And therefore, in the next few weeks, we will start rolling that out and then start the implementation thereof. And the last thing I will mention, we are now recruiting a number of psychologists who will go to schools. These psychologists will help us to set up programs, because one of the things that was mentioned in the symposium to deal with violence from a public health perspective by I think it was a Bahamian psychiatrist, he said, and it's critical to note it, that a damaged child is a dangerous adult. That is a serious statement, which means trauma from childhood, if they are not dealt with, can lead to have increases the chance for people to choose violence. But we are saying also we cannot take responsibility from young people. They have to take responsibility as well, to say, I am responsible to really be an upright citizen. So while we are doing all of this, we cannot take responsibility from our young people. They have to take part in it as well. So it's all hands on deck, including them. So the Elevate program did not seek to disband. Is that we are bringing to it real rehabilitation to implement, so that our people can really have the opportunity to be rehabilitated and to move forward. But while we are doing all of that, the law enforcement part of it will become, of course, continue to become stricter and continue to implement more robust plans so that these things don't happen. But I can say that I'm confident that we have the solution and we will implement the solution to resolve this problem. It cannot continue from one decade to the next, because you cannot pay people not to commit crime. That is a dangerous practice, and we have to admit it. What you would use is give people opportunities so that they would not choose crime as an alternative. But if your objective is to pay people not to commit crime, they will extort you and they will become better at committing crimes, which we would have seen happened in other jurisdictions here in the Caribbean. And that is why that cannot continue, and we have to put a more robust plan in place that will resolve this matter, and we don't have to go into a next decade with violence being a serious issue within our country.
All right, thank you so much for that, Mr. Prime Minister. It is 11:35. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation here on The Edge on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. For those of you who are just tuning in, we have Mr. Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, speaking on matters of healthcare, national security, and priority areas for his administration for 2024. We'll take this break, and we'll be right back.
ZIZ Radio, entertaining the nation, enjoyed by the world.
Healthwise on ZIZ TV, Mondays at 8:30 p.m. Hosted by Dr. Malik Lescott, Dr. Jolette Woodley, and Dr. Patrice Lawrence.
Join ZIZ Television today, Friday, 24th November at 8:30 in the evening for a special edition of Healthwise to launch the Joseph and Franz General Hospital Kidney Transplant Program, hosted by Dr. Jolette Woodley, with special guest the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, Prime Minister of St. Christopher and Nevis, along with Dr. Theodore Hanley, Special Advisor in the Ministry of Health. That's this evening, a special edition of Healthwise on ZIZ Television with Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew as our special guest at 8:30. Join us.
On November 25th, join us for the second annual Sugar Mass Awards. The pre-show kicks off at 7:30 p.m., building anticipation for a night of celebration. At 8 p.m., the main event begins live on the SKN Carnival Facebook page. Tune in for an evening of recognition and honor as we celebrate those who've contributed meritoriously to SKN National Carnival. Don't miss the chance to be a part of this prestigious event as we acknowledge the heartbeat of Sugar Mass.
Welcome back to the Edge here in ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. I'm your host, Devonne Cornelius. Joining me today, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew.
Yes.
Dr. Drew, you are also the Minister of Health, and I believe that healthcare is everybody's business.
Yes.
People have asked questions about the National Health Insurance Plan. Can you speak to that?
Right. So thank you very much for that. I think it's critical. One of the things we spoke about was the National Health Insurance Plan. Mm-hmm. A lot of studies have been done for many years, and we're at the point where something has been presented. A document has been presented with all of the research and so forth to go forward. Now, where that is, we are now in the position of building out the office and getting the appropriate person to head it, and to have meaningful discussions with Social Security of how we're going to establish and determine how this will be funded as well. So that is where we are this present moment. So we're going to see a lot more activities. But in the last year, of course, we would have had discussion, including discussions with PAHO, would have made presentation. The principal advisor to health, Dr. Patrick Martin, he would have also made regional presentation when it comes to health financing, which is the issue with national health insurance. So that is moving along. Mm-hmm. That is moving along. However, we have to admit that is a significant undertaking. It is as big as when we had Social Security for the first time. Mm-hmm. That is the enormity of the situation. However, our people must understand as well, and I think they do to a large part, that health is important and critical, and that healthcare is expensive. And so it will need a systematic approach. It would need all of us to come together, but the necessary information will be given, discussion, consultation, and so forth. Even though a lot of that has happened before, there's a next round that needs to take place. So that too is moving along as well.
Mm-hmm. There are people, Mr. Prime Minister, as you may be aware, who may not have access to insurance, people who are in need of medical assistance, whether it be here in St. Kitts and Nevis, in the region, or internationally. What has been your administration's response to assisting people with their medical bills, expenses?
Right. So remember what I had said, that in St. Kitts and Nevis, no child will die because their parents don't have money. And I'm speaking about the children of poor people, or people who don't have a lot of, financial resources. Mm-hmm. Their children used to die. They just accept, my child have a heart condition, it can be operated on, but where am I going to go? Sometimes they would get help from charitable organizations, mm-hmm. and sometimes that help would not come as fast as they would like it to be. And therefore, what I have done, because I recognize the situation, especially as a practicing doctor, that needed to be remedied, and so we created a fund. And so far, we have had a lot of children who have benefited from it. And I want to say, as a result of that, many of them, most of them who have benefited will grow up to be adults who can contribute significantly and positively to the development of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mm-hmm. And so I want to say that children are covered, but these are children who has to travel necessarily to save their lives. And of course, their documentation would come from their doctor, recommending that they have to fly overseas or go overseas in order to have the specialized care to save their lives. There's also some assistance given to adults. However, because we don't have a national health insurance system, the government just cannot afford it. It will bankrupt the government to a great extent. This is extremely expensive. Mm-hmm. If you were to fit the bill of all people. But let me say, we contribute a lot to it. For example, all the clinics are free. They're all free. Mm-hmm. Elderly get free healthcare. Children get free healthcare in St. Kitts and Nevis. So it's not that a lot is not being done, a lot is being done. However, the working adults who don't have health insurance are those who end up in difficult scenarios where they get sick and they don't have health insurance to cover their cost. That is why we need a health insurance, national health insurance policy or plan so that people can have access to health care. But that alone will not suffice. We need an accredited health system that can provide quality health care and cut down on the number of persons who have to go overseas. And that is why we are saying that we need a new institution, apart from it being climate smart, which means to deal with the scourge of climate change, but you also need it accredited so that you can offer excellent service, and we are on the path now, getting ready to be on the path. So there's significant improvements that we are already making. For example, tonight we are going to launch for the first time the renal transplant program here in St. Kitts and Nevis, where people can get renal transplant. That is a significant development. I want to say that we have already purchased a CT scan. I never spoke about the CT scan, I spoke about the MRI. All plans are going forward for the MRI. But the CT scan, which is a 128 slice, one of the most modern that we have, is already bought and should be here in January, will be at the JNF, can diagnose heart disease. We're also making plans for cardiac catheterization. What is that? Introducing stents into the arteries of the heart. For example, if you get a heart attack, you put up a wire and you deploy a stent that the blood flow can continue through the heart and save the heart, so to speak. We have also brought a number. The most specialists the hospital has ever had is now the JNF Hospital. The most specialists it has ever had at the same time in its history is now. Which means we have not only thought about improving the building structure, but we have also meant what we said when we would improve it. One, we had training for the EMTs, and there's significant improvement in that service. Two, we have specialists, more specialists in internal medicine ward, the neurologists, 2 more internists with focalization, one of them in intensive care, which is helping tremendously. We have presently 4 anesthesiologists. We have orthopedic surgeon, we have general surgeon, 2 full-time general surgeon, and we are seeking to get a 3rd one. The ophthalmology unit has been opened up, and I recently posted that since we started, because ophthalmology was a non-existence in St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of surgery, because the equipment had broken down and they were not bought. And taking office, one of the first actions that I took as the Minister of Health was to buy the eye equipment. And we have surgeries taking place weekly, and now we have saved a lot of person's sight. So all these changes that have been made, however, there are areas that we need to deal with. For example, there are challenges in the emergency room. We have put more doctors there, and we brought in this week a specialist from the United States to take a look at our emergency room and see how she can help us to, in a sense, improve the services there at the emergency room. Okay. This March, we are going to send nurses to Jamaica to train in emergency room specialty. Why we are doing that? It is because we lack specialists in nurses at the hospital. There's hardly any specialist nurse at the hospital. We right now have nurses overseas who are specializing in ICU, because we need that. It's a very specialized area. Those nurses are coming back very soon to enhance and improve the treatment in ICU. And then we want our nurses to go and do emergency room to improve more our services in the emergency room. But apart from all of that, which is critical, because we recognize it's critical to improve the medical care, we have improved on the urology unit or the nephrology unit. So now we have 1 nephrologist, we are getting another nephrologist. So we have 2 nephrologists. And we have gotten more machines to the point where machines are resting while others being used. We got some machines with a collaboration with Mr. Leo Estridge from Canada, who brought in a team who trained our nurses and brought machines. Those machines, of course, were tapped. But of course, that was futile. Now we have more than enough machines at the hospital to treat our patients who need dialysis. And we are taking it a step further for the first time. Renal transplant, organ transplant in St. Kitts and Nevis. Unless we do these big things, we are not going to transform the lives of our people. But while we're taking care of the big things, we want to make sure that the small things, more nurse managers, more nurses getting training, all of those things we have done. Now, for coming up for December, we have a number of things we are going to do. We're going to start the roof repair at JNF Hospital. We are going to deal with the fire in the hospital. We are going to deal also in making sure the aesthetic of the hospital is improved as well. So we have a number of critical things in terms of getting new washers, the fire repair, the roofing to be repaired. And we are putting AC units on both the medical ward and the surgical ward. That is going on presently. So that even with this hospital, while we are going to build a new hospital, and we're going to start next year, 2024, we want to make sure that this hospital, we keep it up, we repair it, because it will be an institution, part of our healthcare delivery plan still. So a number of things we have done there. We have resolved the water problem. There was a serious water problem at JNF for many, many, many years. The blood bank had issues. Remember, people used to say no blood at the hospital. We have resolved that. So we have resolved a number of critical things at the hospital that I am proud at this point on the path that we are going. And I want to thank the nurses, doctors, the cleaners, the cooks, those who are the technicians, those who keep the grounds clean, whatever role you play at the JNF, I want to thank you. And we'll continue to improve the services at JNF and get it to be an accredited institution.
Mr. Prime Minister, we are approaching budget. Your administration is preparing for budget in December. And of course, you will be looking at the fiscal year 2024. Can you speak briefly to some of the priority areas for your administration for this upcoming budget?
We are seeking to establish the sustainable island state. I know people have been hearing that, but it's to create a state where we become self-sufficient almost, but whatever we do is sustainable, to create the best opportunity for us to deal with the issues of climate change and so forth. So guess what we are going to do that? One of the major areas, energy. Renewable energy and cheaper energy. And so we are bringing a solution to deal with that. Issues of water. The water woes that we're having in St. Kitts especially, and I think Nevis might be having some as well, is that we are dealing with droughts like never before because of climate change. We in St. Kitts, we have embarked upon drilling, for example in Keon, we are going to drill the whole of St. Kitts and Nevis. We have embarked upon desalination, partnering with Marriott, for example. So we have brought two significant solutions to the problem, and we have delivered water tanks. Some of them still need to be connected as well, but it's a process that will take place throughout. And we are seeing how we can bring a water tank factory here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And we intend that all persons should have access to a tank to their homes. This emergency response, of course, was because people really had no water, sometimes in areas for weeks and so forth. So we have responded. So the priority areas would be energy, delivering water, IT. And of course, there are other areas. There are 7 pillars, wealth creation being one of them, circular economy, IT, which will be involved transforming our system into a technological system so that we can be more efficient and we can respond better. So we will have a number of significant investments. This year, we were really planning and procuring our investments. We have major projects coming in 2024. Our housing is already on the way. We have the St. Peter's Road, which will also be touched, the St. Peter's Health Center to be completed. Right now we are looking at getting the St. Peter's bus stop as well. The Connery Playfield, which is in procurement stage. The MRI Center, which is also there to be done. And then even though we are doing those, you have a number of other capital projects to be done. And then the major ones. So we are expecting maybe in the next year to 2 years, at least $500 million to $1 billion of investments alone that we know is already confirmed. And we are working on others. So we intend to make sure that we continue with local investments and also international investments so that we can create the best scenario for us to continue to generate jobs, because we want to completely rebound from the days of COVID and so forth. And so we are pushing that. So I'm excited about the new budget and where it will take us. We'll finally get there. But just to say that we will come in the budget with some new things. All I cannot reveal at this time. So I will wait until the budget. And people will get an opportunity to see that in such a short time, this government and my team, I have to keep referring to the team as well, excellent team. After this budget, people really get more taste because they're already tasting where we are heading. They'll get a serious taste of what we want to implement because we're going to set the foundation even deeper after this budget in December. Some of the things I will not speak to as yet, but I know once we would have done those, people would ask, how was this done? But it's because of good planning and clear vision. That is why we will be able to do what we plan to do in the budget for 2024.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you. You're listening to The Edge here on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. I'm Devonne, Cornelius, your host, and joining me today is Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew. Mr. Prime Minister, we want to open the phone lines and get some callers in. And so the phone lines will be open, 465-2555, 718-577-2916. Callers, please be mindful of others who may want to ask questions. Keep your questions straight to the point. We have our first caller for the morning. Caller, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, sir, and good morning, Mr. Prime Minister.
Yes.
Yes, good morning.
Carl Brown here, and good morning to the listeners home and abroad. Mr. Prime Minister, I'm happy to hear about the plans that your government are making, and I hope all of them mostly concern job creation and decreasing the unemployment line, and even creating second jobs for people who are struggling with very, very small salaries. The question I want to put to you, sir, the discussion concerning the budget, has that stopped? We haven't been hearing anything about it because lots of us are waiting to attend those sessions and give our ideas and suggestions. The other thing, Mr. Prime Minister, I hope the budget have in that the EU government is seriously going to be looking at seriously establishing and expanding the small businesses in St. Kitts and entrepreneur, and to help them to create jobs.
All right,
the
caller.
last thing is these projects, Mr. Prime Minister, why are we just building them and saying they are projects? Why don't we develop them into towns and make Bastia the city so that they can create businesses and create jobs, and let us not jumble up Bastia?
Okay, caller, thank you. Thank you, caller. We're going to take some more calls. Let's take one other caller. Caller, welcome to the program. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, caller,
Good
ask your
morning.
question. Go ahead.
What I want to say is that you have your guess at last, and by your sweat of your brow you eat bread. Why putting off people? You is a government like a not government. Why you so much saying a lot of things about Timothy and his brother, and all you're doing and saying is nothing new?
Caller, do you have a question you want to ask the Prime Minister? Thank you for your question. Let's take another call. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning. Just want to say I want to thank the Prime Minister for actually reaching out to the people. Question, I haven't heard you mention anything about the calling home. Could you give an update?
Yes.
For some time now, I've been hearing that things have been done with the calling home, and it's a very critical area that needs addressing, just like the general hospital.
All right, caller. Thank you so much for your questions. Let's have the Prime Minister answer these questions. We'll take a pause on the call.
Right. So, even the caller who called in and said there's nothing new, I know she didn't have a question, but I want to thank the caller because she's a citizen, as it sounds, and even though she did not ask a question, she said something that I think I should address. I want to say that this government has done a lot of new things, and I want to go through a number of things because I think the caller would benefit as well from what I would say on this. One, firstly, in my show this morning, I didn't call any politician's name, so I want to clear that. I call no one's name. I stick to the point. But the government, putting people first, paid 2 cash CBI dividends and $1,000 cash independence 40 to bonus to workers. Because, as was mentioned, we are still recovering from COVID. And COVID, of course, would have affected us significantly. And I understood that. We understood that. Or we understand that even now, that our workers needed the support. And we did something that had never been done before. And I want to say to the caller that was new. What we have also done, increased the Christmas duty-free allowance amount to $625 and carried it to the end of January. That too is new. We passed a Consumer Affairs Act to protect people from high supermarket prices. That too is new and people-centered. We subsidize electricity to an enormous cost. Even though it was subsidized before, we allow people to get reconnection for their water, for their electricity. We reduce their cost on homes and land. comprehensive reset plan that had never been done before. And I'm sure that the caller who called in would have benefited from that. We paid GAE retired workers their well-earned gratuity, because that was reduced under the past administration. We also resolved the distribution of land matters. I also want to say that in education, we made CFBC free for the first time. We reduced student loans to the lowest ever. We removed import duties and supplies for back to school and gave a voucher of $250 to children. Never, ever done before. We have started drilling, and in the last 7 years, there was no drilling. We find a large well. The largest single well in St. Kitts and Nevis ever found is now in Keyon. And I mentioned all those things on healthcare. We brought back partial visa-free access to Canada. We now have visa-free access to Saudi, the first country in the CARICOM. Totally new, even though those things were promised and promised. And I want to stop there because I have a list here. If I continue to go on with all these things that are new, I will not be able to end. So I just want to say to the caller that yes, we have brought a number of things new, including the fund for children, so that no child will die if their parents don't have money. That too is new.
There was a question about budget consultations.
Yes, so I will go on. When it comes to the budget consultations matter that was mentioned, I want to say that for the first time we took the budget on the road. It usually used to be in Marriott. We did that with the young people. And we had two other sessions, one in Lodge, and I think one was in Old Road. Never ever done before. Again, to the caller who said nothing is new. This was new. And so we have brought that type of process to an end, the most open process we would have had. And I'm sorry that the caller missed the opportunity to attend those. Those were highly advertised and people were invited. Maybe because it was the first time that the budget was taken on the road, and I kept saying to the people, we will take the budget on the road to hear from the people. And maybe the caller did not have the opportunity. I'm hopeful that next year, that caller would have the opportunity to come into the public and have his point of view as to where he thinks the budget should go. But for the first time, the budget discussion was taken to the road. You had the FS and her team and the other functionaries and the ministers to hear from the people as to what they think the budget should actually be about. So in a sense, we did take the budget on the road. He spoke about
small businesses.
Yeah, so he spoke about the budget, establishing small businesses. We have formed a small business ministry. The ministry is now fully open and functional. As you know, they had the 40-40, where they gave grants of $5,000 to 40 individuals, not loans, grants. And then in Development Bank, we had the COVID relief loan plan, where over 370 plus businesses benefited from a loan of interest of 2.5%, one of the lowest ever that we would have had across for small businesses. And many small businesses kept their doors open, and many small businesses were able to form as a result. And what we are going to do go forward, that small business ministry will continue to work to get other businesses to be established and to make sure that those that are established, that they can thrive. So yes, we have done that as well. He spoke about the jobs, and that is why we spoke about the projects. I want to say to the caller, because he made a fundamental point. What about Bastia? What about going out of Bastia? However, I want to say that Bastia still has room to modernize even more. And just a week ago in the last cabinet, in the post-cabinet briefing, you would have heard that the cabinet took the decision to adopt the urban revitalization plan that was presented, and we adopted it. So that is a whole plan, and that was in the briefing, and therefore that will be laid out as well to develop Bastia, to give it opportunities for more businesses and so forth, and to help businesses to expand. Now the caller spoke about the salaries and so forth. For the last 10 years, the minimum wage in St. Kitts and Nevis has not been touched. And so we have been doing a study which is led by the Honorable Sam Kanda to improve and increase the minimum wage. We understand we're post-COVID. We understand that the economy is still in recovery, but we want to bring as much relief to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis as possible. And that is why we took on that humongous task of making sure we study the minimum wage and now moving for recommendations of how we are going to address that. But I would say more about how we are going to help people in St. Kitts and Nevis will come as we discuss the budget. But one thing people cannot deny is that this government has done a lot to help people. Electricity, water, land, housing, and of course, what we did in terms of the dividends and so forth.
And there was a question from a caller regarding the card in home.
Yes, so the card in home, I just want to say today that we received, and I will reveal at the right time, the card in home was left in the will of a national who lived in Canada. He has now passed, God bless his soul. But we were contacted that in his will, he left resources for card in home. We had a plan, of course, to ask persons who invest as part of the public good, for example, the housing program, as part of your public good, to assist the card in home. So we know the help is coming. But the national who has passed, God bless his soul, in Canada, has left the card in home in his will, and the documentation is now with the AG to accept the monies. So I want to say to that caller that you will definitely see more work done at the card in home. What we have done at the card in home, we have put more workers so that the persons there can be taken care of. Just the other day, we had the prom for the elderly and disabled, and persons from the card in home went to the prom. We took them to see the dolphin. We're taking them out of the card in home to give them a richer life. I want to thank all those who work at the card in home who have been impacting positively on the residents there. And we are going to continue to respond. And I want to say to the caller, this is the first time I'm mentioning of that significant contribution from a national who has left the card in home in his will, may his soul rest in peace, to really help in its enhancement.
All right.
Thank you.
Can we facilitate one more caller? All right, let's take this call. Caller, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Prime Minister, I'm listening. I'm supporting in many ways. But I want you to look at the water system in St. Kitts.
Yes.
The water system, we've been concentrating a lot on housing. And I'm happy that people can own their own homes. But if you own a home and there is no water, we're talking about drilling wells here and there. Mr. Prime Minister, reservoirs. We need reservoirs. We need tanks. We need reservoirs. The rain falls for 5 minutes, and the reservoir that we have overflow to the sea. And 5 minutes after, the water shut off at 6 o'clock. When I get home at 8, I can't have a decent shower. Please concentrate on building reservoirs. I'll continue to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take one more caller.
That's a very critical point.
A caller, good morning. You're on the air. Good afternoon. Sorry, you're on the air. Caller, good afternoon. You're on the air. Okay, we seem to have lost that one. Caller, you're on the air. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, caller, go ahead and pose your question.
Yeah. Hello. Good afternoon. This is Radio.
Yes.
Prime Minister.
Good afternoon.
Radio. I had a problem. I've worked over city base for 28 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they terminate me. And when I went to the labor department, they tell me I must go to the government. I may do nothing. Right? And I'm asking you to look into a matter for me.
All right, caller.
Okay, caller.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Yes, thank you. What's the name? Yes, I need to get the name, because if it's a caller and it's a worker and he has a grievance, I have to take that very, very seriously.
Okay,
so if you can get the name and a contact for that worker, just to make sure that we cover what the caller has as an issue to be resolved from his perspective.
All right, Mr. Prime Minister,
Yes.
we are basically out of time, so I'll give you the opportunity to answer those questions and
Yes.
wrap up.
Right, the issue with the reservoirs, I want to thank the caller for that point. As part of our water plan, caller, we are going to include storage. And I think, I can't remember how much gallons these storage tanks will be, but that is part of our plan as well. So I just want you to know that, and your point is well taken, which means that you have studied the issue. What we are also doing, caller, is that what we are doing with the water tanks, because it might be difficult for people to build systems. They're very expensive for one, and people already build their homes, and we still want them to have a water storage solution. So with the tanks, we have done it in an emergency way, but in the long term, we want to bring a factory here to build these tanks so that people can have them attached to their homes as storage tanks, so that that too can help us to capture the rainfall. It's called water harvesting. So the people can really be a part of the solution as well. So I want to extend that as part of what we are thinking of. Now, the other thing is, I think that was the last call. That was the last thing on the water matter. And the caller said that he can get a good bath when he goes home. And I feel the caller's pain, because if we have to lock off the water, shut off the water, because we are suffering the worst drought. And these droughts are expected to continue because of climate change. We have to find long-term solutions. Reservoir and storage is one of them. But we have to have water to store. And because rainfall will continue to decrease, caller, it means that there will be less rainfall to capture. But the runoff, we probably will have to find a way to capture that, which we want to. Drilling, the water goes underground, we can access that as well. So it's a multi-pronged approach to dealing with the water shortage issue. But this year, caller, you will see significant improvement because of what we have done thus far. So the water is a significant issue and is a fundamental part of our budget for this year as well. So I think that's it. I just want to wrap up by saying that this government has been working hard on behalf of the people. If you look at each ministry, you will recognize that each minister is making valiant efforts to bring delivery of good services to our people. If you go from tourism, the Honorable Marsha Henderson, who is recovering, we continue to wish her well. In terms of airlift, in terms of seeking to recuperate the cruise tourism. As you know, we were hit significantly as COVID and other factors. If you look at education, just this week, I went to the St. Peter's Primary School to deliver tablets, and I went to the Keon High School to deliver laptops. And those tablets and laptops, they have textbooks on them, tests on them. The teachers make the workload easier for teachers, but more effective. Giving students at any time of the day, even 1 o'clock a.m., if they wake up, instead of doing something, that is not going to enhance them, they can go on their tablet or go on their computer and start to do an exam and allow the teacher to look at it, and they will get the results of their test right there on the computer. And they can generate more tests and practice and become better at the subject area. This we have delivered for the students thus far here in St. Kitts. And so we continue to invest in education. If you go to infrastructure, as I spoke about the water, and I can also talk about energy. As you know, we signed the MOU with Saudi to upgrade our power station here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And we are moving to include renewable energy as well. And from the Nevis end, when I traveled to Saudi, I traveled with PS from the Office of the Premier to make a presentation about geothermal. And we have passed a resolution where we'll treat it as a national, federal resource so that we can develop it for both the people of Nevis and the people of St. Kitts. And so if we go to agriculture, we just acquired tractors. We are building our greenhouse park, heading towards the 25-25, seeking to have more collaboration with the farmers, which I'm encouraging as well. That again, I'm moving the cannabis industry to agriculture so that we can build out that as well. So if you go from ministry to ministry, down to the AG's office with a robust legislative agenda, aging, youth. I went to the youth art exhibition. Aging, we had the prom for the elderly. We have the elderly daycare centers, the first time established here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we're going to expand them for the year coming up. So we must take care of our elderly and our youths as well. And so I want to say that this government has done a number of things, significant things to transform the lives of people. A lot of new and innovative things. And the budget of 2024 will help us to extend that and also to continue to establish a deep foundation in transforming St. Kitts and Nevis into a sustainable island state. What about our housing, our hospital to come, the new investments to come? And so 2024 is an exciting year for all of us. And I would say that all hands must be on deck to deal with the issue of violence in St. Kitts and Nevis. This is not just a government issue. This is a societal problem, a societal issue. We must create avenues for our young people, which we have, but show them the path so that they take them, to turn them away from drugs, crime, and to turn them away from violence. We have to be serious about that, and we will make sure that the budget reflects that, and we also make sure that the programs we implement, those programs should also reflect that. And so I want the people of St. Kitts and Nevis to know that this government, this team, is working on your behalf to make St. Kitts and Nevis a sustainable island state and a model that others can pattern. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. You've been listening to The Edge here on ZIZ Radio 96.1 FM. I've been your host, Devonne Cornelius, and my guest for today was Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew. Until next time, you guys continue to stay safe, enjoy your weekend. Don't drink and drive, don't text and drive. Have a good one.
And stay away from crime.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
In the top stories, AIE conducts radiation inventory in St. Kitts and Nevis. Trinidad and Tobago hosts a collegiate battle box competition, and unsupported cultural festival